ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another third-party unlicensed 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review video. Now today we are going to be taking a look at none other than the Virtual Toys Red Death, aka John Marston and Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption. Now I have previously reviewed another Arthur Morgan on the channel, but I didn't have a representation of John Marston from the first game in the display, hence why I decided to pick up this guy. Now I got mine from Comic Sanctorum. Do bear in mind though, this is a third-party, unlicensed, unofficial product. I have popped the link in the description below for your reference purposes only. This is by no means a promotional video, this is a review on a figure I picked up for my own personal collection. What we are going to do now though is get the box laying flat in the light box and do the unboxing. Here of course we have the box art, and I love the way this looks. A fiery red backdrop with a sunset plus a silhouetted image of Arthur Morgan. I even love the Red Death lettering up top. Now technically, obviously it's from Red Dead Redemption, but because it's third-party unlicensed, they had to come up with their own name. On the side of the box, an extension of the main image, and then all of the warnings on the back of the box. Now I've already seen Dean Knight's amazing review of this figure. So yeah, I'm pretty darn excited to get this guy out here and the million accessories that he just happens to come with. Now I have already reviewed the Limb Toys Arthur Morgan, so it will be rather interesting to compare him to this one. First in-hand impressions though are relatively positive. I'm already noticing some differences. He does however come with a tray down below and another one under that. So what we are going to do now is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Here we have all the parts and pieces, and this guy comes with so much stuff. Don't worry, we won't be spending forever here. I will try and get through all of this as quickly as possible. Now, starting off with the display base first, it's the usual VTS style. It's not overly thick, it is circular, and you have Red Death on a real metal nameplate. You do have some wood flooring on the surface. Even though this looks really convincing like its actual texture, it isn't. This is a 2D image. Up top, you do have a regular crotch grabber. Because this guy comes with so much stuff, I couldn't quite fit his winter jackets on camera, but you do get two of them. The first of which is the blue coat from the start of the second game. You do have some wires around the edge, and it is very subtly weathered all the way around. You do also have some proper elastic buckles that you can hook into these loops to close the jacket up. On the inside, it's lined in black, and you do have some woolen-like fabric around the edges. Now, I don't quite know if I'm going to be displaying him with this jacket or this one. This one I'm pretty sure is from the first game. It's obviously green, it's lined on the inside as well, and you have 3 gold buttons up front. This, I'm fairly certain, is the wool coat for John Marston. Now, there isn't any weathering to speak of, nor are there any wires. We'll have to wait and see what this looks like on him a little bit later on. The real reason why I was super excited though, as I've already mentioned, is that you get the John Marston head sculpt. Now this isn't perfect, but I can definitely see the likeness. The skin texture and the texture down here for the 5 o'clock shadow, plus the scratches sculpted in, yeah, it looks really good. Now for Arthur Morgan, this is technically our second Arthur Morgan head sculpt by a third-party company. Now for me, I do still prefer Limb Toys. VTS is really good from a technical perspective, but I don't quite see the likeness. Also, his hair does come up to a very unnatural and thin point. I'm pretty sure that's so that he can accept the hat on his head and it not look goofy, but when you don't have the hat on there, it does look a little goofy. I am curious though, do let me know which of these two head sculpts you prefer down in the comments below. Now, of course, to go along with the head sculpts, you do get a couple of hats. Let's talk about the standard hat first. The sculpt and the shape I think is on point. The only complaint I might have is that the weathering is a little heavy-handed. As compared to the Limb Toys one, there is a ton more texture over here, but it is also a lot cleaner. So it's going to be down to you. Do you prefer your hat to have more texture but be pretty much brand new, or do you prefer it to look completely filthy? You do have this little tassel, which is a separate rubbery piece. But that's not all. You also get his winter raccoon hat. I love the tail. It's fully articulated with a wire on the inside, and it's fur. Now, obviously this isn't real fur because it's shrunk down to 1/6 scale. Now, the raccoon does have a face up front and a ton of texture for the rest of him. It is fully padded on the inside, so this shouldn't do any damage to the head sculpt when you pop it on. They do also give you two black fabric pieces, one that has an elastic around the back that's supposed to just disguise him and cover his mouth, and the other that's supposed to be his tie. Now these are supposed to come down to points and be a little bit thinner, but because of the nature of the fabric in 1/6 scale, it kind of just springs around and does exactly what it wants to do. So for me, I don't think I'm going to have either of them wearing this tie, because it's a little bit cumbersome to work with. Speaking of belts, you do get an ammo belt. This too looks like pleather, but it isn't. This is made of rubbery plastic as well, so there won't be any deterioration. You do have a couple of shotgun shells. I kind of wish he'd come with a bunch more, but at the very least they are nicely painted. Some shiny metallic gold and some bright glossy red. Now, the buckle on mine is unfortunately broken, and it was like that out of the box. There's supposed to be a little pin that sits right there and pegs into the holes. Now, luckily, you can wedge the strap underneath this retaining section to keep it all in place, but still, it doesn't quite look right with this buckle just free floating. It is painted nicely with some silver dry brushing on the surface, and there is some very subtle weathering over the top of the belt itself. You do get two of the exact same pistol, but they look really good. They are painted in a silver metallic with some dirt and grime on the surface, a real working hammer, plus the section in the middle can rotate. You can also open up the side piece as though he was about to load some bullets into the chamber. And you can see the bullets rotating on the inside. The guns are great. And as I said, you do get two of them. Moving on to some of the smaller accessories, you do get a pack of cigarettes that doesn't actually have any cigarettes inside, but it is fully printed on every surface. You do get a bottle of Two Fist Prairie Moon Gin. It's cast in a translucent plastic, plus the top is nicely painted. This is a very convincing 1/6 scale bottle of alcohol. They've got that slight green tint down pat. You do also get a can of peaches, which is nice and weathered on the top and on the bottom. Plus you do get this little pleather pouch. I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to be. If you know, and if you have more experience with the games than I do, let me know down below. One of the things that absolutely blew my mind with the Limb Toys figure was the notebook. Now this one looks really good. The outside is all made of fabric, you can pull out the little strap, and yes, it is fully detailed on every single page. You've got maps and tallies and drawings and even sketches of people. I love when companies go to this level of detail. Something like this is super simple to do, you literally just have to print on paper, but it makes collectors like me so very happy. I guess these two accessories go in tandem. You get a rather large fish that looks awesome. It's very high gloss, so it actually looks wet, and the paint applications are crisp and clean. You've got green that fades into blue, pink, and then a much lighter off-white down below. But if you do want to have John or Arthur posed as though they are fishing, you do get a 1/6 scale fishing rod. This is the first time I've had the pleasure of owning a fishing rod in any scale, and it looks really good. It's got some wood detail for the rod itself, the wire is actually a translucent plastic wire, and for the spool down below, it is pitted like it's actual metal. Now you do have some sculpted in detail on the inside, which for a moment did trick me. I thought, wow, they've actually made it so that you can wind up the wire, but no, this is just for show. The wire itself is free floating, and there's a teeny tiny little dragonfly as bait. So if you did want to, you can have them posed as though they are fishing off the display base. Some of the neatest little pieces of set dressing here are the dynamite sticks plus the box to go with it. The sticks are nicely painted, they're dirty and grimy, plus you have the fabric wick up top. Now the box is painted to look like wood, and for some reason it's really heavy. This feels like a substantial piece. Now the handle is plastic, and no, you can't push it in. I was really hoping there'd be a spring on the inside so you could push this down and have it spring back up, but nevertheless it still looks really good. You do have more weathering up top, plus two little sections where normally you'd have the activation wires. This, as I said, is a very nice little piece to just have as set dressing on the display base. If you are including shotgun shells, you do kind of need to include a shotgun, and this looks great. You do have a real working top section where you can insert the shells, plus this section up top can also move left and right. It's painted to look like metal. It's got a gunmetal base coat, then some silver dry brushing over the top. Plus the wooden sections do have some feathering so they get a little bit darker towards the edges. Plus, I absolutely love that you do have two triggers down below. While we are on the subject of weapons, you do get two long rifles. The first of which is done in gunmetal with some silver dry brushing on the surface. These are made of plastic, no metal in these whatsoever. You do have some actual fabric straps, so no pleather, no deterioration, plus the wood is nicely painted, just like the shotgun. You also don't have any moving parts, all of these pieces are fixed in place. As for the other rifle, it is a little bit of a lighter wood color down below, but the handle is still just as dark as the other one. Now the gold sections are very shiny and metallic. They don't have any pitting on the surface, but I guess if you do have a gun that looks as opulent as this one does, you are going to keep it nice and clean. I have to say, as a reviewer, this can be a little bit daunting, but we are almost done with the accessories. He does come with a bow and arrow, the detail for the arrowhead looks great, and the rod section is made of metal. You also have a teeny tiny little clip section down below, so it can actually hook onto the real elastic string for the bow. And when you pull it, you can see the bow does start to flex just a little. I probably wouldn't pose them holding this for a long period of time because it does feel a little bit fragile, but then again it's entirely up to you. I do like the feathering of the wood color. It's slightly darker up top, it gets lighter, and then darker again towards the edges. They also give you his satchel plus a bag of money. Now this is very clean, but the satchel isn't. This thing is filthy. There is dirt and grime on pretty much every surface. Now you can open it up and I guess store some of his other accessories inside it, but you do have a strap up top, so yes, of course, this can be worn. Lastly, he does come with an array of hands. Nowhere near as many as I was expecting, considering how many accessories he comes with, but they will get the job done just fine. You have some smaller hands that are ungloved, and the detail looks great. There's some sculpted in veins, you've got some hair painted in on the back of the palms, and then for the gloved hands, they are slightly longer as they cup over the wrist peg, and there is a ton of leather-like texture on the surface. There isn't any weathering as far as I can tell, but I'm perfectly happy with how the hands look. What we are going to do now, though, is get the figure himself out here and take a closer look. Here we have him standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that, and he is wearing his default outfit. I personally really like the way this guy looks. Does that mean he's perfect? No, definitely not. There are a couple of things that we do need to discuss, And you'll see there are some things he does slightly better, but also slightly worse than the Limb Toys figure when we do that comparison. Now, the body is good, but not perfect. For some reason, mine has this really awkward lean. It's like his left leg is ever so slightly shorter than his right one. Now, it could just be an issue with mine. I hope that they're all not like that. The proportions, though, are good. He does look relatively heroic. Nice broad shoulders, and it does taper down to a slimmer point for the waist. What we are going to do now, though, is take him off the rotating turntable, punch in, and take a closer look at the details. Here we have him up close and personal. Now, in just a second, we will be trying out the John Marston head sculpt and a couple of the different outfit options. But starting off with Arthur Morgan, I think the hat complements him beautifully. It doesn't sit too high, it doesn't sit too low, so in my display, he's always going to be wearing the hat. Because when you remove it, yeah, his head does start to look a little bit weird. I am glad that it sandwiches down in place and sits right above his brow. Now, moving down to the jacket, it is very clean. Don't get me wrong, I like the way it looks, and I do like what it does for his proportions with these nice square shoulders. But I do prefer the Limb Toys jacket because it's slightly more weathered. You have the pleather section up here for the collar, and there aren't any wires here, so you do have to hope it sits down and does what you want it to do. Underneath, you have his blue shirt with some darker blue stripes and some real elastic suspenders connecting down to his green pants. Now, I do have him wearing the gun belt, and it has a very bright chrome gold belt buckle with some dirt and grime on the surface. You also have a pleather belt with some real metal bullets up front. Now, you can decide which holster to go with on the belt. You simply have to open it up and slide it over the top. Now, I have the pistol on this side. I was tempted to put the knife on the other, but then he started to look just a little bit too busy. Coming down to the pants, they're green. They aren't dirty at all. They're completely brand new and pristine. Whereas Limb Toys had some dirt on the knees, these look like they are fresh from the factory. Now, coming down to the boots, there is a ton of leather texture. And as you just saw, they are a split-cut boot design, which makes me so very happy. Now, he does also have some spurs, which do come separately in the box. They don't rotate, they're fixed solid plastic pieces. You do have to peg them in place, and mine have fallen off quite a few times, so do be careful not to lose them. Underneath, they are completely smooth, but you do have a little bit of dirt and weathering on the surface of the boots themselves. Lastly, I do have him wearing his satchel, which of course is completely optional. As for John Marston, I really like this head sculpt too. Now, the hat does sit ever so slightly higher because technically it is made for Arthur, but I don't think that looks hideous. That can totally work in the display. Everything else is exactly the same. Now, it is going to be up to you to decide which outfit options you want to go with in your collection, but for me, I think I'm going to have him wearing the dark green jacket, which looks something like this. Now, technically, most of the outfit remains unchanged. Same boots, pants, and shirt, but now we have the long green trench coat. And I love the way it looks. The sleeves are a little bit long, especially if you are using the gloved hands, but if you spend the time to futz with it, get the shoulder pads to sit just right and everything to look the way it's supposed to, I think you're going to be pretty darn happy with this jacket. Because I know I definitely am. This figure is 100% going to look exactly like this in my display. It's honestly super impressive that they included enough pieces to simply switch out the jacket, pop a new head sculpt on here, and we have a brand new figure of a completely different character. Now, if you did want to, you can bring in Rakakuni and pop it on his noggin. Now, don't forget you do have a wire for the tail, so you can get a little bit more dynamic with your posing. Plus, Rakakuni does have some padding on the inside, so he's not going to scratch up Arthur Morgan's noggin. But for me, I'm probably going to just go with the hat in the display. Now, the blue jacket looks great. I love the choice of blue, I love the weathering, and of course you do have the wire down below, in case you do want to expose a little bit of the wool from the inside. Now, when I reviewed the Limb Toys figure, you all correctly told me that, Justin, you don't have the belt and the satchel on the jacket. It's supposed to look like this. Thank you for letting me know, and yes, you are 100% right. This is the correct configuration, and it looks really good. I haven't quite decided yet which is my favourite look, but this one definitely is right up there. Lastly, you do have the option of going for no jacket at all. Now that means you are fully exposing the blue shirt, and you can roll up the sleeves. The seams are a little bit messy with a couple of strings here and there, but if you cut them away, it will look perfectly serviceable. Plus, underneath the sleeves, his forearms are fully sculpted and painted. There's vein work, there's skin texture, and there is hair both sculpted and painted onto the surface. These look great. I've also placed his tie around his neck, and as we discussed earlier, because of the material it's made out of, it kind of just decides to go wherever it wants to. I would love for it to sit down in place and actually expose a bit more of his neck, but as it stands, yeah, that's not really something it wants to do. You do have a ton of different looks that you can use for this figure. I do want to know which one is your favourite. Now for a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have the Limb Toys Gunslinger on the right and the VTS Red Death on the left. And interestingly enough, even though they're based on the same character in the same outfit, it goes to show how different the figure can look depending on which company it comes from. Now, for me, if I had to pick a winner, I would still go with the Limb Toys. Even though his hat does sit slightly higher, the outfit being weathered the way it hugs the body, and because he comes on a slightly bigger body, he just checks a lot of boxes for me. Now, that's not to say the VTS release is bad, because it isn't. It's still a very strong offering, but there are certain things that I think just work a little bit better with Limb Toys. Now, if you are after a slightly shorter Arthur Morgan, then yes, VTS can do that for you. Plus, he does come with that John Marston head sculpt, and that is something that the Limb Toys one unfortunately doesn't come with. Speaking of which, here we have that head sculpt, and this starts to make a whole lot more sense. Now, obviously, in the display, you're not going to have them wearing the exact same outfit, because that's just kind of weird. You're going to mix it up and have different clothing items on John Marston, because that's exactly what I plan to do. Now, who's to say if the scale is bang on here? Now, yes, it's a video game, but as we all know, in video games, 1 mile isn't exactly 1 mile. So who's to say that 6 foot is our version of 6 foot in real life? I know, I got a little bit conceptual there, but if you sit down and think about it, there's no real way of knowing how tall these people are supposed to be. So for me, being the sizes and heights that they are, yes, it totally works in the display. Just going over articulation. Now, bear in mind, this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. I'm sure when you get yours in hand, you can push the joints slightly further than I am willing to go. Now, starting off with the head sculpt, it is on a ball joint at the base of the head. Looking forward and back, swivel and then pivot side to side. The arms will go up to there. They will go forward and back. Butterfly joint at the shoulder that also hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, a ratcheted double bend at the elbow that does get you just past 90, plus a regular 1/6 scale wrist peg. The torso does crunch forward and back, swivel and pivot side to side. The legs will go forward to there, they will go out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee that does get you past 90, and lastly a split cut boot design with a double ball peg down here for the ankle. Just wrapping up on the VTS Red Death. Now going into this, I had one big question on my mind. is this guy going to be superior to the Limb Toys Gunslinger? And now at the end of the video, I feel relatively equipped to answer that question. No, certain aspects of this figure are superior. He comes with a ton of accessories plus the John Marston head sculpt, but I think the Limb Toys figure is ever so slightly better. I like their choice of body, I like the weathering on the outfits, plus you do get multiple Arthur Morgan head sculpts, and I think the likeness there is just stronger. Now, if you do prefer a figure that comes with head sculpts from different characters so you can switch it up from time to time in the display, well, this one is going to be it for you. The posability is still on point, he does come with multiple different outfits so you can mix and match, and as I said, a ton of stuff. The sheer amount of accessories is kind of overwhelming. Plus, if you do have the Limb Toys figure, now you can pick and choose and share the accessories between them, which is exactly what I am going to do. Now, don't forget, this guy is a third-party, unlicensed, unofficial product. I have popped the link in the description below to Comics Sanctorum, the place where I got mine from. This is not a promotional video, this is a review on a figure I picked up for my own personal collection. While you're down there, why not check out the link to 6 Scale Network, the Facebook group. Come along, chat figures, share photos of your collection, and of course, see what's coming up next on the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.